NBC 10 presents Decision 2018, the fight for power. The battle lines are drawn. The candidates make their final pleas. Are you ready to vote? We'll present the issues, the races, and what's at stake. Count on NBC 10 News, tonight at 7. A nation divided.
We're in a different United States.
A presidential promise.
And we will make America great again.
A tumultuous 2 years. Protests, unrest, and sweeping overhauls.
It's the largest tax cut in the history of our country.
Our health care is so expensive, it's killing us.
The individual mandate is now gone.
Communities reeling in the wake of tragedies. And now, millions will make their voices heard.
I want to see a change in the immigration laws.
You got to think about us. You got to think about the little guy.
The fight for power that could send this country on two different paths.
We really need to take back the House this year to represent our values in Congress.
Will the so-called blue wave sweep the nation?
I was raised Republican. You know what I mean? I support Trump with everything he's done ever since he got into office.
Or will it crash right into the red wall? NBC 10 News presents Decision 2018, the fight for power.
Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Jim Rosenfield. We are now just 5 days away from November 6th, a date so important it could turn the tide of this country for years. Of all the challenges the White House has faced since January 2017, this may be the toughest. No matter where you live, no matter who you are, and even if you're not voting, this will impact you. Critical issues like the economy, health care, gun safety, and immigration will all become very important in this election.
Why does this year matter so much? It's about power. Control of the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania, control of the House and Senate in Washington. Right now in the nation's capital, one party controls everything. That could change, and voters in this region could have a big influence on that.
You think there's too much power in one party's hands right now?
Yes, and like anyone in power, it is all ultimately self-serving, you know, and ideally to try to give a little bit more voice to people that actually represent the people they're supposed to represent, you know, instead of just themselves or the party that they're there for.
Close races in two of our states will help determine who controls the House and Senate, with longtime New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez running on the heels of a corruption court case, and Democrat Bob Casey defending his seat. And there's also the White House. There is no question the president is a factor in the midterm elections. He said so himself.
A vote for Steve is a vote for me, and a vote for Cindy is a vote for me. A vote for Marcia is really a vote for me.
Donald Trump's traveling the country, rallying his voters. And don't forget, he won Pennsylvania. Voters chose him for the White House to bring change to Washington, and he has. Now he's energizing Republicans and Democrats.
The choice in November could not be more clear. Democrats produce mobs. Republicans produce jobs.
I see Trump as a real problem in terms of how he presents himself as the president.
Voter Celeste Clancy tells me for her, the midterms are a chance to make a statement on the Trump presidency.
These elections are not the presidential elections, but nevertheless, it is causing me to think about pulling one lever.
At the heart of it, this election is the power to control things that matter to voters. Health care, safety for your family, jobs, and for voter Lateef Merritt of Frankfurt,
prison reform, equal justice, and things like that.
That desire to speak to power is also why so many people are getting involved this year, not sitting on the sidelines in the run-up to Election Day.
We're talking a lot about power and the biggest chance for Democrats to take some of that power back that lies in the U.S. House of Representatives. Take a look. Right now, the GOP has 235 seats, while the Democrats have 193. Democrats would need to flip 23 Republican seats on Tuesday to regain control of the House. One of the closest races in the entire country is playing out right here at home. And NBC 10's Lauren Make is joining me now to talk about this. Lauren, this one's getting national attention so close.
Jim, Brian Fitzpatrick and Scott Wallace are neck and neck in the fight for Pennsylvania's 1st District. A new poll on this race shows this is a dead heat. This is the New York Times Siena College poll. It has Fitzpatrick up just 1%, 47 to 46 for Wallace, with 7% still undecided. I talked with both candidates and those voting for them in a Pennsylvania battleground that could have a national impact.
In Bucks County, charming suburban streets meet high-stakes national politics.
Scott Wallace has radical values and funds radical causes.
I'm running against Brian Fitzpatrick. He's taken big bucks from corporate special interests.
It's here that Republican Brian Fitzpatrick is defending a congressional seat in a county Hillary Clinton won by about 2,700 votes in a year when Democrats want that seat and control of Congress.
If there is a blue wave, and we don't know if there will be one, but what makes you think you can hold it off here in Bucks County?
Well, this is a very local community. I've been here my whole life. I know the people well. They know our family well, and we're also a very independent community, and I've had a very independent voting record.
Running against Democrat Scott Wallace, Fitzpatrick has earned the support of voters like Ann Rogers, who says she likes the job he's done.
I'm pro-Fitzpatrick because I tend to be more conservative, and I don't think Wallace has relevant experience.
But to some, this race is about something else.
It's about sending a message.
Jerry Montella says she's an independent who has voted for Republicans in the past.
Particularly in this year with President Trump in office as a Republican, I refuse to vote Republican because the Republican Party has not stood up to such an idiot.
President Trump looms over the midterm elections across the country.
Is this ultimately a referendum on how they feel about him?
Well, that certainly is what Donald Trump is saying, isn't it?
Is it what you think?
He does these rallies and says, it's all about me. Well, I think it is the voters' first big chance since 2016 to say what they think about the trajectory of the country, not just Trump, but the Republican Congress.
On November 6th, voters may look at what Republicans did while in control and give them credit or blame. For example, the tax bill that provided for tax cuts for both businesses and individuals. Fitzpatrick, a former FBI agent who's in his first term, voted for that bill and stands behind it, citing the strong economic growth that has followed.
And look what we've seen. All you need to do is look at the economic data.
But Wallace, who's been running his family's charitable foundation, argues the bill helped wealthy Americans like Wallace himself. And he says it could now cost taxpayers in other ways.
And now they're going to come back and ask ordinary working people, the other 99%, to pay for the $2 trillion hole they blew in the budget, to pay for it through cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
It's a concern that we asked Fitzpatrick about.
The question now that some voters worry about is, how is that going to be paid for? And will things like Medicare and Social Security be cut or changed in some way in order to pay for that bill? Is that going to happen?
No.
Would you support that happening?
Absolutely not. I am unequivocally supporting Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. In fact, the reason why I voted against the budgets that I have, the reason that I voted against the repeal of the ACA was all because of that.
This race is one that's being watched for what it says about suburban Philadelphia voters, a Republican congressman who likes to talk about bipartisanship, and Democratic determination to take the seat and take back power in Congress.
I'm going to vote for Scott Wallace because I'm not happy with Brian Fitzpatrick. I'm not happy with the Trump administration. I'm not happy with the Kavanaugh appointment.
One poll this fall captured a moment showing Fitzpatrick ahead in this district, but by about the same margin as respondents said they'd prefer Democrats control Congress.
How do you fight against that people want someone else to be in charge?
The decision for every single community is, do you want a centrist representing you, or do you want an extremist on one side or the other?
Big families should be taxed.
Fitzpatrick and national Republicans taking ads out in this race have tried to paint Wallace as too extreme for voters here.
We'll stand up to this other guy.
Wallace has tried to tie Fitzpatrick to President Trump and dismisses Fitzpatrick's work with the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus in Congress.
Problem solving and consensus building legislation is not something you need a caucus for. It's something you need a commitment to. It's not just for show.
You think it's for show?
I think it's for show, yes. It's for people in moderate districts who have to appear more moderate than they are. Brian Fitzpatrick votes with Donald Trump almost all the time, 84% of the time.
Do you consider yourself a moderate?
I consider myself a pragmatist.
Voters here in Pennsylvania's 1st District choosing between Scott Wallace and Brian Fitzpatrick and choosing what message they'll send when they send one of these men here.
And with so much at stake this year, we're seeing more and more political activism, right? As you, the voter, try to make your voice heard.
Yeah, Jim, it is not always the case with the midterms, but this year we're finding people wanting to do more than just vote.
On this Sunday afternoon in South Jersey, Carol Sands' home is packed with people, including a former U.S. Senator and pro basketball player rallying the crowd.
New Jersey needs to send a message.
So you let all these people come into your home today. Why?
Well, for the last 2 years, I've been increasingly concerned about our democracy.
Sands is among those Americans who've decided that this election is important. This is not a sleepy midterm. From this Lumberton home where Carol Sands is hosting a Democrat and worrying about this,
I've been concerned about the violence on our country and about people losing their health care.
To a Bluebell office where these women are phone banking for Republicans and urging,
if you want independent judges, not legislatures, please vote Republican on November 6th.
The Montgomery County Republican Committee has a new volunteer strike force that's been working in the field and working the phones. Liz Hosey usually saves this level of involvement for presidential years.
Why are you involved this year?
Because President Trump has done so many wonderful things for our country. I want to make sure that he secures the House and the Senate to continue to make America great.
Connie Dooley says she considers this year crucial.
I think this midterm election is like a re-election from Donald Trump's election.
Feelings about the president and Congress firing up work for Democrats, too.
I just want to know, are you satisfied with the way this country is going right now?
No. Here, union members mobilizing recently to get out the vote for Democratic candidates in Philadelphia.
Well, thank you for your time.
And nonpartisan efforts also stepping up with organizations like interfaith group Power.
Anyone that we care about. So that's who we're making a list of.
Kendra Cochran runs voter engagement here.
We are actually literally out here fighting for our lives.
Cochran says she's seen more people getting involved. They have a new strategy, too.
Typically, people are out here calling strangers. This year, we're calling our friends and our family. We're going to make sure that we're taking personal responsibility, and then after the vote is out, that we're holding these same folks accountable.
New efforts across the region from those who believe putting in the time, especially this year, is worth it.
I've never done fundraisers. I've never written letters to the editor before. This is all new to me.
And one of the most important races in our area is the fight for the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania. PA, one of 36 states that will decide its next leader on Tuesday. The right to lead Pennsylvania comes down to a heated race between current Governor Tom Wolf and businessman Scott Wagner, a race that's seen the campaigns come out swinging.
Between now and November 6th, you better put a catcher's mask on your face.
The race for the state's highest office punctuated by questions of temperament.
Because I'm going to stomp all over your face with golf spikes.
After Tom Wolf's Republican opponent, businessman Scott Wagner, was forced to apologize for a Facebook Live rant promising victory on November 6th. Those very words turned into an ad for Wolf himself. Putting aside ads, the decision by voters on Election Day can impact how easy it is to get a job or get coverage when you get sick.
A lot of policy begins at the state level.
Policy on everything from access to health care to abortion rights and access to guns. They're all issues that could be decided in Harrisburg should leadership in Washington decide to give the states more control.
At times when there are perhaps changes afoot at the federal level to policies such as abortion rights or gun control, what happens in the states becomes very important because it may eventually fall to the states to address those issues.
Take health care, for example, and what happens to the future of Medicaid coverage in PA.
But here's the deal. In Washington, there are people trying to roll back Obamacare. In fact, right here, just saying, right here in Pennsylvania, Scott Wagner, my opponent, wants to roll back Medicaid expansion. We can't let that happen.
You know, when you talk about Medicaid expansion, you know, I will look for a waiver from the federal government, and I think we can do a much better job managing the dollars ourselves.
Governor Wolf supported expanding coverage to low-income Pennsylvanians as part of the Affordable Care Act passed during the Obama administration, while Wagner wants to add a work requirement for able-bodied adults as a condition for coverage. And keep in mind, who's in charge at the State House can also have a big impact down the road on who might retain or gain control in Washington well beyond this election cycle.
Most of the governors elected next month are going to still be in office after the 2020 census, which means that they're going to be in office when redistricting occurs. So in states where the legislative maps have been drawn in such a way as to favor one party over the other, the outcome of those governor's races is very important because that whole process is going to be revisited again in a few years, and both parties want to be in control of the apparatus.
If Governor Wolf wins re-election, he'll become the first two-term Democratic governor since Ed Rendell. A Wagner victory would return a Republican to the governor's mansion lost by the GOP in 2014.
I just think that we are in an emotionally supercharged political environment right now.
Next on Decision 2018, the fight for power, an insider's view on the division and frustration surrounding Washington and what could turn it all around.
I'm not saying just because of the party. I just feel that the changes that are happening in the world as people make a difference, and that we need to figure something out that's working. So
everything's an issue this year. Race is an issue. I mean, everything's racially motivated. If you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, everything's an issue this year. That's how I see it. When we should all be focused on everybody just being united. I don't care who you believe in. I don't care who you want to vote for. Your vote is your vote because that is your belief. My vote is my vote because that is my belief. It shouldn't deter us, however, from how we treat each other and how we see other people.
NBC Tonight.
I think my water just broke. Thanks a lot, Amy. You got it on my shoes.
It's a Superstore double delivery.
Hello, I'm Dr. Gillespie.
It's like Grey's Anatomy in here.
Then, her mother back from the dead on The Good Place.
This is as real as the nails under my acrylic nails.
And on Will and Grace, who will be Jack's best man.
I didn't want Will to think I preferred you.
I do.
Over him.
I don't. And from Amy Poehler, the new comedy, I Feel Bad. It's an all-new NBC Comedy Thursday tonight.
Seth Grossman will deny coverage to people with pre-existing conditions like cancer and asthma. Why? Grossman says pre-existing conditions are the result of bad decisions. We can't let Grossman take away our health care.
I'm Jeff Van Drew, and I approve this message.
There are moms who fought to protect our kids from gun violence, like Madeline Dean.
Montgomery County's Madeline Dean.
Madeline taught ethics in college, so you know we need that in Congress.
Madeline Dean didn't just teach ethics. In Harrisburg, Dean challenged her own party to support reform. She refused the taxpayer-funded car, said no to per diems. In Congress, Mad will be just as tough.
I'm Madeline Dean, and I approve this message.
I'm Bob Menendez, and I approve this message.
Trump and Hugin, it's way more than a handshake. Bob Hugin was Trump's top New Jersey fundraiser. Hugin stood by Trump's tax breaks for the super rich while stripping our property tax deduction. Hugin stood by Trump's Supreme Court picks. Hugin stood by Trump when he tried killing Obamacare, attacked women, and made racist comments. Bob Hugin will never stand up to Trump. To stop Trump, stop Hugin.
I'll always remember the first time I set foot in the White House Situation Room. Politics was checked at the door. The stakes were high, but we listened and worked together to save lives. That's exactly why I'm running for Congress. To put the lives of New Jersey families before politics. I'll work with both parties to make prescription drugs and quality health care affordable. And I'll always refuse corporate PAC money. I'm Andy Kim, and I approve this message for change.
Tim Carney.
I'm for lower property taxes, making the oil companies pay their fair share, for affordable health care, and against insurance companies trying to take away coverage for pre-existing conditions.
Tim Carney, architect, small business owner, small town mayor, family man.
I will be a voice for small business and against special interests. I want to change Harrisburg. They need to stop pointing fingers, take responsibility, and get things done.
Seth Grossman called Social Security and Medicare a Ponzi scheme, and he'll gut them, breaking America's promise to our seniors and endangering millions. We can't let Seth Grossman destroy Social Security and Medicare.
I'm Jeff Van Drew, and I approve this message.
You're watching NBC 10 News Decision 2018, The Fight for Power.
Welcome back. I'm Jim Rosenfield. As we've been saying, the Democrats are trying to take back power in Washington. They need 23 seats to flip the House in their favor. A quarter of them could come from right here in our area. Take a look. These are the seats that are currently red right now. And Lauren Make is back. Lauren, you're taking a closer look at some of these races.
Yeah, Jim, we already told you about the heated Fitzpatrick-Wallace race in Bucks County, but that is not the only House battle brewing in a swing district.
In South Jersey, it's a race that's attracted one of the Democrats' biggest names, former Vice President Joe Biden. On this day, he's campaigning at a diner for Andy Kim, the Democrat trying to unseat Republican Tom MacArthur in a race that's also attracted a flurry of ads, including one where Congressman MacArthur closes with this.
I'm running to represent you, whether you like Trump or not.
Why did you think it was important to say that?
Well, this is a swing district.
MacArthur currently represents the district split between Burlington County that voted for Hillary Clinton and Ocean County that voted for President Trump. It means this race tests the president's influence and policies. MacArthur's votes in favor of the tax bill that passed and the health care bill that didn't are big issues in this campaign.
That my opponent is someone who was the elite architect of that health care repeal bill.
Millions of dollars has been spent by my opponent and his supporters telling people in South Jersey that I don't care about them and I wanted to rip health care away from them. Anybody who knows me at all knows that that's false. I do care.
While races like MacArthur Kim pit an incumbent against a newcomer, in the Lehigh Valley, the battle is over an open seat. Longtime Congressman Charlie Dent, a moderate Republican who's been critical of the president, retired. That leaves this district, another split between Trump and Clinton counties, up for grabs.
I would say I come more from the Charlie Dent mold than most people would think.
Marty Nothstein is the Republican running to replace Dent in a race that's also keyed in on health care.
Why would Marty Nothstein want to go to Congress to take health care away?
Democrat Susan Wild declined to talk to us without questions in advance.
I won't take people's health care away.
Nothstein says Obamacare has failed everyone, but also argues.
And I've said from day one, I will fight to keep pre-existing conditions as part of health care plans.
That's part of Obamacare, though. How do you keep that and get rid of the other stuff?
Well, you know, you're going to have to come up with something new.
Right now, we're getting an inside look into the world of politics in Washington from a man who lived it nearly every day for the last 4 years. Congressman Ryan Costello represents Pennsylvania's 6th district, which includes parts of Montgomery, Chester, and Berks counties. For this midterm, he's decided not to run again for re-election. Lauren sat down with Costello for a look at the last couple of years in office and what's ahead for Washington as he gets ready to leave Congress behind.
Congressman Costello, you're not running this year, but you're a good person to give us some insight into what it is like in Washington right now. How would you describe the atmosphere?
I'd say it's very divided. I think there's a lot of emotion that's built up in our country, and I think a lot of members feel pressure to project that same frustration or same emotion. And I think that actually negatively impacts our ability to work together at the moment. My hope is that this election cycle exfoliates some of that. I'm pessimistic about that.
Why?
Well, I just don't think that people view that this midterm as somehow being a solution to their frustrations. I think that there's just a lot of people that want to continue to fight. When there's a disagreement or something terrible happens, I find that a lot of people are more interested in making sure the other side gets blamed rather than figuring out what the responsible solution is. And even more than that, accepting that a compromise is not going to have everything that you would like to see in it, but it'll improve the situation.
How much does the president set the tone for that? How much has he played into that?
It's interesting. He sets his own tone. I think at times, at least in the House, we've actually tried to set our own tone. Sometimes it's been different than what the president has done.
Is that successful?
I felt that there were times where it was or it could have been, but then you find on the Republican side, his most ardent supporters in the House make sure that the president's tone or position is adopted. And the other thing, and this is going to be a real challenge for Democrats, is the president is a trigger for Democrats, for their most liberal activists, and I see that seeping out into Democrats who I get along with and have found that I'm able to work with. And it's going to be it's an open question whether Democrats are going to come to the table, whether they're in the majority or not, and adapt, at least for the first year before the presidential election happens in 2020, whether they're willing to adapt a constructive, productive approach to governing, or whether they're going to view their obligation as being need to fight the president, need to investigate this, need to continue to push back and resist, et cetera, et cetera. Because I've found from the moment that the president was sworn in, many voters, many Democrats, and some Democratic members of Congress, their MO has simply been push back, resist, attack, and anything the president says or does, assign that same objection or disgust onto Republican members of Congress, even if they don't necessarily agree with the president's tactics.
You have been in Congress when your party was in the majority, but you have also been there when the White House and Congress were controlled by different parties. So you've seen that. What's the difference in whether people are willing to work together, how people talk to each other?
My experience is that when President Obama was in office, it was easier for me to agree or disagree with something that he did and not have some sort of expectation from my constituents that I had not pushed back hard enough or that I had somehow sold out. Whereas now with President Trump, if I oppose him, I hear it very, very strongly from conservative Republicans. But if I vote for something that the president signs into law, I will often hear it incessantly from Democratic voters in my district. I just think that we are in an emotionally supercharged political environment right now. And we're also looking at trends that are happening in the marketplace or in our communities or in the country. And I think we're assigning political meaning to things that may not have political meaning. And I think that it's not a good thing for our country.
Why not put your tax returns out and let people actually just see the truth?
I'm not doing it, period.
Why not?
Because
coming up, money and politics. NBC 10 grills the nominees about their tax returns and why they refuse to show the voters just how much they make and pay.
The current administration and how they're trying to turn back the time and have it at a time where people who look like me were denied the right to vote. And I have every right to vote just like every American has the right to vote.
America needs to stand up and say, we need what we need, and you got to think about us. You got to think about the little guy.
Our country's totally divided. I don't like that. I am happy with this area. I'm okay with our local representatives. That's probably about it.
As polarized as our legislature has become, people are tired of it. They're tired of Congress not getting anything done. If the folks who are there aren't going to do that, then we need to change who's there.
I'm Mary Gay Scanlon, and I approve this message.
Susan Wild.
I'm proud to have spent a career serving local families and our communities. I'm running for Congress because the extreme partisanship in Washington today is hurting our Lehigh Valley families. I'll be a bipartisan force to make health care more affordable for the middle class, to make college and career training more available, to end tax giveaways to corporations who then ship jobs overseas. I'm Susan Wild, and I approve this message.
I'm Chrissy Houlihan, and Washington has turned our country upside down.
With so much anger and partisanship, Congress is getting nothing done. The truth has been turned upside down, too. What's wrong is right, and what's right is wrong. As a former Air Force officer, businesswoman, and teacher, I'm answering our founding fathers' call to serve. I approve this message because we have to heal our country. Together, we can turn Washington right side up again. Have you seen these smears against Scott Wallace? Fact checkers call them false, out of context, flat-out lies. They're ads for a desperate Brian Fitzpatrick. The truth? Scott Wallace's foundation has invested millions to fight child abuse. And working with Republicans, Wallace helped write the Missing Children's Assistance Act. Police, prosecutors, and law enforcement back Scott Wallace for Congress.
Don't believe the attacks. I trust Scott Wallace to keep us safe.
I'm Scott Wallace, and I approve this message. I'll always remember the first time I set foot in the White House Situation Room. Politics was checked at the door. The stakes were high, but we listened and worked together to save lives. That's exactly why I'm running for Congress. To put the lives of New Jersey families before politics. I'll work with both parties to make prescription drugs and quality health care affordable. And I'll always refuse corporate PAC money. I'm Andy Kim, and I approve this message for change.
From gun violence, like Madeline Dean.
Montgomery County's Madeline Dean.
Madeline taught ethics in college, so you know we need that in Congress.
Madeline Dean didn't just teach ethics. In Harrisburg, Dean challenged her own party to support reform. She refused the taxpayer-funded car, said no to per diems. In Congress, Mad will be just as tough.
I'm Madeline Dean, and I approve this message.
As polarized as our legislature has become, people are tired of it. They're tired of Congress not getting anything done. If the folks who are there aren't going to do that, then we need to change who's there.
I'm Mary Gay Scanlon, and I approve this message.
You're watching NBC 10 News Decision 2018, The Fight for Power.
And welcome back to our special election coverage for you. We've been talking to voters in our area about what's driving them to the voting booth on Election Day. And our partners at NBC News and the Wall Street Journal did the very same thing. They asked which topics are most important as people decide who they want to represent them in Congress. At the very top of the list is the economy and jobs, the top choice for nearly a quarter of the people questioned. It's followed pretty closely by concerns about health care, something we've heard echoed by voters here at home. And rounding out the top three is desire to change how things work in Washington. So who's going to Washington to represent us? 3 Senate races are playing out in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. There is Senator Bob Casey taking on Lou Barletta in Pennsylvania. In Delaware, it's Senator Tom Carper facing Rob Arlett. But the most unexpectedly close race, and a potentially historic one, is in New Jersey. And NBC 10's Lauren Make is back now to explain. Lauren?
Jim, New Jersey has not elected a Republican senator in decades, and Bob Hugin is spending millions to try to change that. A new poll from Emerson College has Menendez leading by 5 points. Now, while he has an advantage as a Democrat in New Jersey, he also has a challenge this year that other Democrats don't have.
As we've learned, elections have consequences, and the Hugin-Trump agenda will have disastrous consequences.
Senator Bob Menendez making the case to keep his job in New Jersey. This state is not a traditional battleground, but this year it's getting attention because of a race that's made some Democrats uncomfortable.
You have 2 bad people, in my personal opinion.
It's kind of a lose-lose situation right now.
It was 1 year ago that Senator Bob Menendez survived a corruption trial that ended with a hung jury. Now the Democrat is running for re-election against Republican Bob Hugin in a race closer than expected for blue New Jersey.
What do you say to Democrats who, even though your trial ended with no convictions, look at the admonishment from the Senate and are disappointed? What do you say to them?
I say to them, look, I recognize that you're disappointed. And as I have said in the past, I apologize for it. But I also say, look at my lifetime of work and choices and judgment.
Menendez is running on his record, more than 25 years in the House and Senate, and trying to tie Hugin to the president.
Bob Hugin has made his bed with Trump.
while Hugin, the former CEO of pharmaceutical company Celgene, is claiming he's independent.
Let's be clear. First of all, I'm a New Jerseyan, an American, and a Republican after that.
And he's slamming Menendez with ads including this one.
Outrageous.
Bringing up old and unproven allegations involving prostitutes that Menendez says is false and full of lies.
That investigation did not end up charging him with those things. So do you think maybe it's a little misleading for voters?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I'm not saying he should go to jail. I don't say lock him up. I'm just saying the standard of behavior for a United States senator, that the voters should get all the information available.
The Garden State hasn't elected a Republican to the Senate since Clifford Case. His official Senate biography describes him as a, quote, liberal Republican, and he was last elected in 1972. More voters are Democrats than Republicans, and even more voters are not affiliated with any party. But recent polls have shown this race in single digits.
Interrupt you. Don't interrupt me. You know it's a lie.
Hugin has put $24 million of his own money into the campaign. Now in the final stretch, Menendez is getting new help from national Democrats.
It is a blue state. I think under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have to put money there. But obviously, if you're putting money into a race that should be safe, that's money that's not going somewhere else.
In October, a PAC dedicated to electing Democrats to the Senate launched its first 2 ads in New Jersey.
The deciding vote for Donald Trump's agenda?
With Republicans holding a slim margin in the Senate, one of those ads urges voters not to let Hugin be the president's, quote, deciding vote on issues like health care and the Supreme Court. Menendez voted against now Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and criticized the FBI investigation with this.
If that's an investigation, it's a bull investigation.
Hugin says he would have voted for Kavanaugh, but says the process was a disgrace and the FBI investigation should be, quote, transparent.
How did you feel watching Christine Ford? Did you believe her?
I found both of them to be believable. The only issue I had was the corroborating evidence. I think in America we still believe that people are innocent until they're proven guilty.
For some voters, the issue for them now is the balance of power. For others, it's Menendez himself.
If they elect you to another term, are you going to handle gifts differently?
Yeah, I mean, clearly the question is my interpretation of the Senate rules, and I have a clear understanding of it now, and I will act in accordance with all of the Senate rules.
Voters in New Jersey now deciding with a Senate seat on the line.
And Hugin and Menendez, just 2 of many politicians duking it out on the airwaves this year. You've no doubt seen those political ads with one candidate slamming the other and vice versa. Those commercials and attacks have been heating up as we get even closer to Election Day. NBC 10's Keith Jones has a closer look.
It's time for you to go.
Scott Wallace would make things even worse.
Gut protections,
Rubber stamp,
aggressively raised prices.
The political attack ads are hard to miss.
Congressman Fitzpatrick stands with Trump.
From Washington to the State House, the midterm elections have candidates running commercials on practically every channel, all over the Delaware Valley, making big allegations.
Hugin was willing to do anything to get rich, including misleading cancer patients.
When will we as a society begin to believe women, to trust women?
What a hypocrite. What about the underage girls who accused you, according to the FBI?
And viewers are taking notice.
From what I've seen, they're pretty nasty.
I can't. It's too much.
I tend not to look at the campaign ads because pretty much negative on all sides for the most part, so I really don't put any emphasis on that.
Many say they'd rather see what candidates will do. They say their 2 biggest issues, jobs and health care.
It's a huge concern.
Referrals, follow through, the cost.
The cost is astronomical, so yeah, I think it's pretty important.
Hugin aggressively raised prices for life-saving cancer drugs.
Why would Marty Nothstein want to go to Congress to take health care away?
Yet there are some viewers who tune out and see through the attacks.
It's all, excuse the expression, stuff. You know, it's just stuff so that they can get elected. There's an agenda on both sides.
Reporting in Philadelphia, Keith Jones, NBC 10 News.
Whether it's ads or interviews, we learn a lot about candidates during election season, their votes, their families, even their pets. But there is one thing this year that some candidates are not willing to share, their tax returns. And we wanted to know, why not?
I would love to give the tax returns, but I can't do it until I'm finished with the audit.
That was then candidate Donald Trump in 2016. He never did release his tax returns, and now in 2018, he has company from other candidates.
Are you going to release your tax returns so voters can see them before the election?
No.
That's Pennsylvania Republican candidate for governor Scott Wagner. The owner of Penn Waste says his tax return is complex and has been mischaracterized in an ad by his opponent.
So why not put your tax returns out and let people actually just see the truth?
I'm not doing it, period.
Why not?
Because it is how much I make. I've started from scratch. I've paid all my taxes. I've met all the financial requirements.
How do we know that?
Because go to Harrisburg, all the financial requirements have been made.
But there is value in seeing an actual tax return, says Committee of 70's David Thornburg.
Well, there's a lot of important information that you could learn from someone's tax returns. You can find out, of course, how much money they make, what kind of charitable deductions they have, who they owe money to.
In Bucks County, Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick challenged his wealthy opponent Scott Wallace to release his tax return to make a point about the tax bill Fitzpatrick voted for.
We can present our tax returns, we can give them to NBC 10. You guys can crunch the data, old tax code, new tax code. You can make clear who's benefiting from it.
But when we asked for Fitzpatrick's return, his campaign told us only if Wallace hands over his at the same time. The result now? Voters aren't seeing either one.
Clearly you can tell I want to release them. I want him to
But
release
you won't
them.
just give them unless he will.
Well, why would one side give them and not the other? That doesn't...
Because they're running for public office.
And it's not something Wallace is open to at the suggestion of his opponent or a reporter.
He's asking, as your opponent wanting to do a comparison, I'm asking as a journalist, do you think voters have a right to know what your tax return is?
I think this is a distraction.
Wallace says the real issue is the impact and cost of that tax bill.
That is far more relevant to the voters of this district than the personal tax returns or anything else. Let's talk taxes. Let's talk about taxes for the voters of this district.
So you don't think they need to see them?
No, it's a complete distraction.
Thornburg argues releasing tax returns should be standard for candidates from the president on down.
I think it should be blanket, and you know, people get squeamish about it. Nobody likes to feel that somebody else can, you know, look at their what they perceive as their business. But frankly, that's a cost of public service.
Now to a potential game changer in Tuesday's elections, the Latino vote. The large migration of Puerto Ricans to the U.S., especially here in our area, could provide a powerful punch at the polls. Christian Cázares from our sister station Telemundo 62 shows us how a sleeping giant could soon wake up.
Every time they answer and tell us, yes, we're here, we're with you, it gives us more adrenaline.
For about a week, Miriam Ramirez has been knocking on as many doors in Philadelphia as she can.
We just started, so we've only done 30, but we got like 300 more to go.
Her purpose is to get residents pumped up about Election Day, especially Latinos.
A lot of these people don't know where to go vote. They don't have a voting plan.
We were doing a massive voter registration effort. A lot of Puerto Rican evacuees came to Pennsylvania.
So far, this group has registered over 6,900 voters with a goal of 200,000 doors to knock, hoping the Latino vote can have a stronger voice.
We are a growing population. They say that every year nationally, 500,000 Hispanics turn 18.
Overall, Latino registration is increasing, according to the Philadelphia Voter Registration Office. But the problem is attendance at the polls.
Elections are held on a working day. If you are an hourly wage earner, you'd have to take time off from work. That could cost you money.
A reality this Puerto Rican volunteer experienced firsthand and now serves as her motivation.
I worked as an interpreter in voting polls, and I think I only interpreted for like 2 or 3 people in the whole 2 or 3 years. It was very sad.
Well, experts say regardless of your political views, your vote always counts. Christian Cázares, NBC 10, Decision 2018.
We have to continue this work. We have to sustain this energy to make a strong case for voters to look to, recruit, and support women candidates.
Still ahead, a wave of women. Local candidates making a push that could change the political landscape, and the millions of voters behind them ready to send them to Washington.
What's
What's motivating me this year is the immigration laws. And I want to see a change in the immigration laws.
Things need to change.
What kind of things do you want to see change?
Health care. You know, I don't want to lose pre-existing conditions, and you know, our health care is so expensive, it's killing us. My husband has a second job for, you know.
Everything's important. I'm especially with watching for Medicare, how our, you know, Congress is going to do, even our governor. But as I said, we vote, my husband and I, we vote in primaries, we vote in the general election, always. If you don't vote, don't say anything.
NBC Tonight.
I think my water just broke. Thanks a lot, Amy. You got it on my shoes.
It's a Superstore double delivery.
Hello, I'm Dr. Gillespie.
It's like Grey's Anatomy in here.
Then, her mother back from the dead on The Good Place.
This is as real as the nails under my acrylic nails.
And on Will and Grace, who will be Jack's best man.
I didn't want Will to think I preferred you. I do. Over him. I don't.
And from Amy Poehler, the new comedy, I Feel Bad. It's an all-new NBC Comedy Thursday tonight.
Want these people running Burlington County? Joanne Schwartz oversaw a hospital where the disabled were abused. Felicia Hobson was convicted of check fraud. And George Youngkin, he beat his wife. The worst candidates ever.
There are moms who fought to protect our kids from gun violence, like Madeline Dean.
Montgomery County's Madeline Dean.
Madeline taught ethics in college, so you know we need that in Congress.
Madeline Dean didn't just teach ethics. In Harrisburg, Dean challenged her own party to support reform. She refused the taxpayer-funded car, said no to per diems. In Congress, Mad will be just as tough.
I'm Madeline Dean, and I approve this message.
I'm Bob Menendez, and I approve this message.
Trump and Hugin, it's way more than a handshake. Bob Hugin was Trump's top New Jersey fundraiser. Hugin stood by Trump's tax breaks for the super rich while stripping our property tax deduction. Hugin stood by Trump's Supreme Court picks. Hugin stood by Trump when he tried killing Obamacare, attacked women, and made racist comments. Bob Hugin will never stand up to Trump. To stop Trump, stop Hugin.
I'm Chrissy Houlihan, and Washington has turned our country upside down. With so much anger and partisanship, Congress is getting nothing done. The truth has been turned upside down, too. What's wrong is right, and what's right is wrong. As a former Air Force officer, businesswoman, and teacher, I'm answering our founding fathers' call to serve. I approve this message because we have to heal our country. Together, we can turn Washington right side up again.
Here we go again. Politicians are talking about protecting your health care, but I've already done it. My company health plan covers pre-existing conditions, and we take care of each and every person who works there. Under Tom Wolf, health care premiums are going through the roof. We can do better. We must do better. I'm Scott Wagner. As governor, I'll make sure that every Pennsylvanian has access to good quality health care. You deserve no less.
Scott Wagner for governor. Want these people running Burlington County? Joanne Schwartz oversaw a hospital where the disabled were abused. Felicia Hobson was convicted of check fraud. And George Youngkin, he beat his wife. The worst candidates ever.
You're watching NBC 10 News Decision 2018, The Fight for Power.
In a time that's been dubbed the Year of the Woman, we're seeing a wave of women in politics. Take a look at these numbers. 23 women are running for Senate. 237 are running for the House, for a total of 260 female candidates. But even if they all won, they'd still be outnumbered 2-1 by the men. NBC 10's Aaron Coleman shows us how women politicians are making waves.
Ballots will look a little different on Tuesday, dotted with names like Bonnie, Lisa, and Madeline.
It is fun to be running with this diverse set of women who are super talented.
I do not take this opportunity for granted. I'm just so excited about the possibility.
Some of these women candidates already blaze trails in courtrooms and boardrooms.
All of us have been in male-dominated professions our entire lives.
That makes Capitol Hill less daunting.
When I started as a young lawyer, I had a client ask whether they let girls write briefs. as in legal briefs. I told him that, we don't wear them, we write them.
After November 6th, we could have a record number of women representing our communities in Congress.
We have to continue this work. We have to sustain this energy to make a strong case for voters to look to, recruit, and support women candidates.
Pennsylvania is the largest state without any women representatives. In fact, a study from the Center of Women in Politics at Rutgers University ranks it as the 11th worst in the country when it comes to that equal representation.
In our federal delegation, we have 0 women serving.
Allison Schwartz was the last woman to represent Pennsylvania in Congress.
It was certainly lonely.
She served Montgomery County and Philadelphia for 10 years until 2015 when she left to run for governor.
Women are 52% of the voters. We're here. We have a right to be, I think, should be represented. We're going to be a part of the conversation to change the conversation in Washington.
7 women are running for Congress in our area. Incumbent Lisa Blunt Rochester wants to represent all of Delaware for a second term. Republican candidate and former Delaware County prosecutor Pro Kim is facing off against civil rights attorney Mary Gay Scanlon in the PA 5th. Chrissy Houlihan, the retired Air Force captain and former executive at And One Basketball, is running in the PA 6th. State Representative Madeleine Dean is looking to trade the State House for the U.S. Capitol. She's seeking the PA 4th's House seat. In New Jersey's 12th District, Bonnie Watson Coleman is running for a third term in Washington. And in the Lehigh Valley, former Allentown solicitor Susan Wild is the Democrat on the ballot for the PA 7th.
It's been great to have the support of the other women running in this area. We've got a text group and we compare notes fairly frequently.
Notes including making changes at the Capitol.
Having more women in Congress certainly should change the tone of some of the conversations. And it certainly is going to change the input.
The Kim Scanlon race guarantees a woman will again represent at least a portion of Pennsylvania.
It's amazing that I can be part of changing the narrative of politics and possibly shattering some glass ceilings and being the first woman of color elected into Congress in Pennsylvania.
Erin Coleman, NBC 10.
Now a race we haven't seen the likes of in decades, a key battleground state right here at home thanks to a new map. And what happens if the tide shifts to blue? I spoke with NBC News political director and Meet the Press moderator Chuck Todd for his take. Chuck Todd, thanks so much for being here for our election special, the midterm elections. Tell me the last time you can recall this level of interest in a midterm election.
94 is the last one where you had so many candidates, so much money, and so much interest, and frankly, so much drama going into the last week.
Let's talk about this year, and we all know Pennsylvania played a key role in sending Donald Trump to the White House. We've seen him out campaigning for Republican candidates around the country, trying to hold on to that majority in the House, right? So talk to us about the races in our area that are key to that battle.
When you look at the Pennsylvania and the battleground this year, it is part of the House battleground in particular. Obviously, things got started with that special election out in western Pennsylvania with Connor Lamb. And the victory that he got there before, of course, the court-mandated remap. And that, of course, is what makes, I think, Pennsylvania among the 3 or 4 most important states in the House battle nationwide.
Let's talk about what's at stake here. Let's say the Democrats regain control of the House. We still have perhaps the Senate in the hands of Republicans. We've, of course, got Donald Trump still in the White House. So then you've got 2 parties at play once again in the House. What does that mean in terms of the kind of legislation or what might get done or not get done?
That scenario that you paint, one party in the Senate, one party in the House being the opposite party of the president, it is a recipe for big-time gridlock. And I think it will set up 2020 to essentially be a contest of deciding which party is to blame for the gridlock going forward.
Mm-hmm. We will see on Tuesday, November 6th. Chuck Todd, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
You got it, Jim.
You're watching NBC 10 News Decision 2018, The Fight for Power.
Seth Grossman will deny coverage to people with pre-existing conditions like cancer and asthma. Why? Grossman says pre-existing conditions are the result of bad decisions. We can't let Grossman take away our health care.
I'm Jeff Andrew, and I approve this message.
Have you seen these smears against Scott Wallace? Fact checkers call them false, out of context, flat-out lies. They're ads for a desperate Brian Fitzpatrick, The truth? Scott Wallace's foundation has invested millions to fight child abuse. And working with Republicans, Wallace helped write the Missing Children's Assistance Act. Police, prosecutors, and law enforcement back Scott Wallace for Congress.
Don't believe the attacks. I trust Scott Wallace to keep us safe.
I'm Scott Wallace, and I approve this message.
Susan Wild.
I'm proud to have spent a career serving local families and our communities. I'm running for Congress because the extreme partisanship in Washington today is hurting our Lehigh Valley families. I'll be a bipartisan force to make health care more affordable for the middle class, to make college and career training more available, to end tax giveaways to corporations who then ship jobs overseas. I'm Susan Wild, and I approve this message.
There are moms who fought to protect our kids from gun violence, like Madeline Dean.
Montgomery County's Madeline Dean.
Madeline taught ethics in college, so you know we need that in Congress.
Madeline Dean didn't just teach ethics. In Harrisburg, Dean challenged her own party to support reform. She refused the taxpayer-funded car, said no to per diems. In Congress, Mad will be just as tough.
I'm Madeline Dean, and I approve this message.
I'll always remember the first time I set foot in the White House Situation Room. Politics was checked at the door. The stakes were high, but we listened and worked together to save lives. That's exactly why I'm running for Congress. To put the lives of New Jersey families before politics. I'll work with both parties to make prescription drugs and quality health care affordable. And I'll always refuse corporate PAC money. I'm Andy Kim, and I approve this message for change.
Forgetting to save for the hard times? That's nuts. We squirrels do it every year. Governor Wolf must have learned from us.
Pennsylvania has a rainy day fund for emergencies.
It was almost broke until Tom Wolf showed up.
He's put tens of millions into the rainy day fund. The first deposits in more than a decade.
You never know when the hard times might hit ya.
Good thing Governor Wolf's saving for the future.
You'd have to be nuts not to.
Tom Wolf, working to change Harrisburg for us.
Seth Grossman called Social Security and Medicare a Ponzi scheme, and he'll gut them, breaking America's promise to our seniors and endangering millions. We can't let Seth Grossman destroy Social Security and Medicare.
I'm Jeff Van Drew, and I approve this message.
You're watching NBC 10 News Decision 2018, The Fight for Power.
There is no better place than NBC 10 to find out the moment a race is decided on Tuesday. NBC10.com will be your go-to source on November 6th. Denise Nakano shows you everything you need to know.
There is a lot at stake in this election, so here at NBC 10, we want to make it easy for you. We built this website, NBC10.com/politics. It has information about the candidates, the races, getting to the polls. It has all our coverage right here on this critical and important election. So you can find the local candidates, and all you have to do is just click on right here or here to find out the candidates in your area. We've also focused in on how redistricting has impacted the midterms in Pennsylvania, how it's reshaped it. So if you want to find out how your congressional district has changed, all you need to do is plug in your address and you can find out has it become more Democratic or more Republican. And then find out exactly where to go to the polls and at what time. All you need to do, put your address right here, just click it, and there you go. So all you need to do is visit NBC10.com/politics or visit the NBC 10 app. I'm Denise Nakano, NBC 10 News.
And NBC 10 News at 11 is the place to get your local election news. Tomorrow, we'll bring you Election No Show. The NBC 10 investigators find an election supervisor who hasn't been showing up at his City Hall office for years. Then coming up on Monday, election hacking. You've been hearing about Russian hacking for 2 years. Well, now we're looking into the possibility of election software hacked in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And then Tuesday, Election Day, NBC 10 will bring you live election results as they come in. The area's largest team will be fanned out across our area to bring you the winners and losers. For Lauren Make and all of us here at NBC 10, I'm Jim Rosenfield. Thanks for watching.
Washington Republicans found their next yes man, Marty Nothstein. Because Nothstein's a typical Republican who rubber stamp their agenda, like gutting protections for pre-existing conditions, cutting taxes for corporations and the wealthiest 1%, and charging older Americans up to $1,500 more for their care, according to the AARP. Marty Nothstein, another typical Republican politician who's not for us. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Did you know that Congressman Tom MacArthur was an author? Yes, and he got $400,000 from the drug and insurance industry. What did he write? He wrote the bill to allow insurance companies to charge people 50 and older 5 times more, including a chapter to gut protections for people with pre-existing conditions like asthma and diabetes. Yes, Tom MacArthur wrote the book on how to make our health care more expensive in New Jersey. DCCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
When Congressman Fitzpatrick votes, he always gets Donald Trump's stamp of approval. Fitzpatrick supports defunding Planned Parenthood, just like Trump. Fitzpatrick voted with Trump to gut protections for people with pre-existing conditions. And Fitzpatrick voted to give 83% of tax benefits to the wealthiest 1%. That's Trump's plan too. Congressman Fitzpatrick's with Trump, not us. Planned Parenthood votes is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Tom MacArthur cut middle-class taxes, saving New Jersey families over $3,500. Now unemployment is at a 50-year low. Tax cheater Andy Kim would take us backward. Kim took an illegal $70,000 tax break on his D.C. condo. Now Kim wants our congressional seat so he can help Nancy Pelosi raise our taxes. Andy Kim, Nancy Pelosi. Higher taxes, lost jobs. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Time and Temperature sponsored by Cure Auto Insurance. Drive well.